My name is Julie McDonough. I am with Bremer Bank, and I'm your co-host this morning, and wanted to welcome you and thank you for being here. I heard a lot of people commenting on the absolutely gorgeous sunrise that we got to see coming in this morning. It's not snowing today like it was a week ago today, so that's a good thing. We're happy about that. My co-host this morning is the creator of this breakfast. He's an executive coach, a prolific blogger, and the author of several books on leadership, including his latest, How Goodness Pays. Please join me in welcoming to the stage the CEO of Good Leadership Enterprises, Paul Botz.
You know, we found the only jazz trio in North America that would do a breakfast meeting. Many of you know this. Goodness is defined as when people thrive together in a culture of encouragement, accountability, and positive teamwork. If you're going to lead with goodness, you have to figure out how people thrive when you're disrupting their world. I don't want to delay this any longer other than to say one more thing. I love it when I get to introduce you to another fabulous Gustavus colleague of mine who's changing the world. Please join me in welcoming Nicole LaVoi.
So 1979 literally was my ticket to ride. I was 10, and it shaped the arc of my life and my career. There were 4 things that happened in 1979. Not just that my family moved from Missouri to Minnesota when my father took a assistant professor job at St. Cloud State. And not just that I, went to double digits from 9 to 10. But there were 4 things that happened, maybe ironically and coincidentally related to sport, that shaped my passion for fairness, my fight for people to have the opportunity to do what they love and what they're good at, and equity, and to fight for what's right and just. So the first thing that happened, when I moved from Missouri, I played softball and soccer in an all-girls league. When I moved to St. Cloud, Minnesota, there was neither. So being a softball player, and I was a pitcher, I thought, well, I'll just join Little League. So I went to Little League. I showed up. I was the only girl. I thought, well, that's all right. And the coach was sort of looking at me sideways. And then he said, well, what position do you play? And I said, well, I pitch. And he looked at me and said, girls don't pitch. How about right field? So out I went. I never touched the ball the whole time I was there. And I left with hot tears in my eyes and just a feel of, I was not raised to be told that I couldn't do something. Oh, I was mad. And I never went back. So that was the first story. Second story, so now it's the fall and it's football season. And I'm in 5th grade, my new elementary school, Lincoln, which we fondly called Stinkin' Lincoln. And I'm going to play flag football. It was a co-ed. We had a great team of, 5th graders. And, in 5th grade, you're all about the same size, the boys and the girls developmentally. So it was awesome. And I wanted to be quarterback. Well, I was assigned to be left tackle. I know, and you're thinking, you're not really a left tackle material. But I was really probably the same size then as I am now. So I was a pretty good left tackle. I took it very seriously. And that was such a fun experience of feeling included and valued and playing with the boys, and we were all equals. The third thing that happened, so football season ends. Now it's basketball season, and I want to play basketball. Well, I'm Ted, there's no girls' team. It's 1979. And I thought, okay, I'll try out for the boys' team, which I did with one other girl, Mary Beth Becker and I. We tried out, and we both made the boys' team. So the next morning, I'm sitting in class, and in walks someone with a pink slip, and I got a note to go to the principal's office. And I thought, oh, well, this will be fun. The principal's going to congratulate me for making the team. And so down I went. I'm all skippity-doo, and I walk in the door, and he looks at me, and he says, sit down, young lady. I thought, oh, I'm in trouble. And he said, I hear you've made the boys' basketball team. And I said, yeah, it's really exciting. Our first practice is tonight. He said, well, wouldn't you rather like to do ballet or join the Girl Scouts? And I thought, this is literally what I said. Well, I'm already in the Girl Scouts, and ballet's not my thing, and I want to play basketball. Well, that was not the answer he wanted. And I didn't know then, but I certainly know now that because of Title IX, which was passed in 1972, that made gender discrimination in our schools illegal, that what was afforded to the boys had to be afforded to the girls, including sport. He had to let me play basketball. Now, what I didn't know is that some parents of the boys who got displaced were calling him and wondering why their boys did not get the opportunity to play and the girls did. The fourth thing that happened was now basketball season's over. It's spring, so I can't play soccer, and there was a tennis court across the street from my house. And so I started playing tennis with the neighborhood kids. The boys and the girls, we would all play, and I got pretty good. And the boys would, when they needed a fourth for doubles, they'd come knock on the door, and they'd say, hey, can you play? And I thought, wow, I'm getting the opportunity to play with the boys. Well, what I realized later is that they really wanted to try to ace me every time they served and took every opportunity to pelt me with a volley or an overhead. There were many times I left with, giant welts and tears in my eyes, and I got resolved that I was going to get really good at tennis, and someday I would be better than all of them, because they were not treating me as an equal, and they did not respect that I love tennis just as much as them. So those four things, all in 1979, all around sport and fairness and opportunity and equality and being respected for doing something that you love and that you're passionate about, really solidified my arc of my life and my career. So in high school, as a classic 3-sport athlete, I also was in the band. I was writing for the sports section of the school newspaper. And the band director said, well, you can either do band, I played the saxophone, alto saxophone, or you could, be in tennis. So you pick. So I picked tennis. So I had to quit band. Now, as I'm leaving high school, I wanted to be a sport journalist because I liked sport and I like to write, and I'm looking at schools for journalism, and I was told more than once, women are not sport journalists because you'll never see your family, and it's a really demanding schedule, and there's no women. I thought, oh, well, that's strange. So I didn't do that. I ended up at Gustavus. Go Gusties! Which really shaped my life, who I am, and what I do. I got to play tennis there for 4 years, and my junior year, we won a national championship. Thank you. It's one of my most proud achievements, but more importantly, it proved to me that I was better than those boys in the park. So after Gustavus, I got to travel all over the country, doing what I love, playing with my teammates, learning about myself, growing up. Tennis really shaped my life. Sport shaped my life. It made me who I am today. And as I was leaving Gustavus, I really didn't know what I wanted to do because I had done an internship at Johnson & Johnson World Headquarters for corporate fitness, and I hated it. And I thought, now what? It's my senior year. I don't have a career path. And I was coaching in the summers, and I loved it. And I was like, okay, now what do you love? Well, I love sport, and I love coaching. Now, you have to know that I grew up, both my parents were teachers. And growing up, I'm like, I'm never going to teach. You don't make any money, and it's not sexy. And, I wanted a power suit and a leather briefcase, and I wanted a real job. So as I'm thinking, I'm like, hey, what do I like? I like to coach. All right, what is it about that I like to coach? Well, I like to teach. Dang it! So I learned that I like to teach through sport. That I love seeing young people grow and know themselves and who they are and become strong and confident through their sport experiences. So I started coaching. So as a young coach, I thought, well, I'll merge my love of travel and tennis. And so I applied for a job in this big fancy sport tennis academy where you would travel the world and get to coach tennis at these fancy clubs, and you'd rotate every 6 months. And I thought, you can get paid for that? This is great. So I went down, I had a weekend-long interview, and it was me and about 50 men and all-male staff. And it's on-court, off-court interviews. It was very intense, and one of the last things we got to do is you got to sit down with the guy who owned the company and his staff and ask questions. And so I had a lot of questions, and not surprisingly, I'm just noticing there's not a lot of women on your staff. So why don't you have more women on staff? Not the right question to ask. He looked at me and he said, young lady, the times that I've hired women in the past, I train them up and I give them all this training, and then they meet some guy and they get married and they have a baby and they never come back, and I'm just wasting my money. And I thought, And in my head I'm thinking, I don't think I'm going to get this job offer, and I don't think this is a good fit for me. Well, I didn't get the offer, but that's okay. Now, after that, when one door closes, one opens. I got the opportunity to apply to be the head tennis coach at Wellesley College, an all-women's college out in Boston. So little Mary from the prairie in St. Cloud, Minnesota goes all the way out to the East Coast to coach at this fancy, elite, all-women's college, one of the best in the country. And that was transformational because I saw the positive benefits that these young women got for being in that environment and being on our team and growing into these confident, strong, amazing change makers in the world. And I thought, I want to do this, not just one team at a time. I want to do this for lots of girls and women. And right about that time where I had this realization, the Tucker Center for Research on Girls and Women in Sport at the University of Minnesota opened its doors. And our founder and first director, Dr. Mary Jo Kane, opened the Tucker Center. And I thought, I'm going back to Minnesota, and I'm going to study in the Tucker Center because I want to empower young girls and women in and through sport as I had experienced. It had given me so much. I wanted to fight for opportunity. I wanted to fight for women to do what they love and what they're good at. I wanted them to be treated equitably. And so I went back and I got my doctorate in the Tucker Center. And when I was working on my doctorate, I would sit in the basement of Cook Hall and I would dream. I would just think, someday my dream goal, that one in the future, I want to work in the Tucker Center. And 25 years later, I am now the director. The Tucker Center, for those of you who don't know what it is, the Tucker Center for Research on Girls and Women in Sport is housed in the School of Kinesiology at the University of Minnesota. At the time when it was founded 27 years ago, it was the first and only research center of its kind in the entire world dedicated to the study and making a difference in the lives of girls and women through sport. We're not the only anymore. We have colleagues around the world who have modeled similar research centers off of the Tucker Center. But what we do is we use data to create social change for girls and women in sport, to start dialogue, to educate, to argue for equity, to stimulate decision makers to make a difference, to commit, to be allies, to make change. Because what we know from the data is we have a lot of work to do. So we do research in 3 areas. First of all, we do it in participation for girls and women in sport. What we know from Title IX in 1972, 1 in 27 girls played sport. Today, it's about 1 in 2.5. So we'll just round up, 1 in 3, okay? Great progress. However, the half empty is that boys and men still outnumber girls and women, almost 5-3. Meaning that girls and women have less opportunity to play sport. And we know when they play sport and they're physically active, it leads to a lot of positive benefits. Health, psychosocial, social, even spiritual, academic. And women that play sport are more likely to achieve and get paid more in male-dominated industries. There's a great stat that came from Ernst & Young that 92% of C-suite women in Fortune 500 companies played sport. Now, as a researcher, that is not coincidental. So playing sport leads to a lot of positive developmental and health benefits for girls and women. That opportunity is critical. So we do research around that. The second thing that we do is we get data that shows that female athletes in women's sport is not shown very often in the sport media. And this is important because who and what we see tells us who and what is valued in society. Girls and women make up 43% of all athletes. They get 4% of sport media coverage. 4. It's disproportionate and it doesn't reflect the reality of girls' sport participation. And when they are pictured, they're often pictured in ways that minimize their athletic competence and highlight their femininity and their heterosexuality. Look, I'm cute and I'm sexy, not that I'm a great athlete. And why does that matter? Not only who and what we see is valued, but how we see them, how they show up, tells young girls in our society that it's more important what you look like than what your body can do. And when girls are sexualized, even in a context like sport, which is supposed to provide a valuable counterweight to all the negativity in society that girls are bombarded with, even in sport, we have a long way to go. And also, when we see females and female athletes in particular sexualized, they have these amazing bodies that are athletically gifted. It also tells boys and men that female bodies are sexual objects to be desired. It does not increase interest in and respect for women's sport. The third thing that we do is we get data to help change the occupational landscape for women leaders in sport. This is my wheelhouse. This is what I do most often in my work. I told you post-Title IX, we have 1 in 3 girls playing sport. In 1972, 90% of girls and women were coached by women. 90%. Today, even with record numbers of girls and women playing sport, 43% of college athletes are coached by women. So it's gone down. And it's even lower at the high school and youth levels. Why does this matter? I get this question a lot. So what? So you have a lack of female coaches. Why? We just want the best coach. Right. I get that. But when you say we want the best coach, what you really mean is you want a man. Because the competencies that are associated with coaching are also associated with men and masculinity, being confident and loud and assertive and taking up space and being a leader. Right? We know that women coaches matter. Same sex and same identity role models matter to girls just as much as they do for boys. And most all boys, I would say 100%, get a male coaching role model that they look up to, that has influenced their life. A lot of girls right now, they don't get a female coach. They don't get that opportunity. I never had a female coach, not once. I don't know what that would feel like. So I feel really passionately about changing the occupational landscape for women in sport because many of them don't feel safe, valued, or supported. So at the Tucker Center, in my current role, you can see that 10-year-old in 1979 and all those experiences that shaped the arc of my career is I get the opportunity to fight for fairness for all girls and women in sport around the world. I care very deeply about this. Girls deserve the opportunity to do what they love, to be given equitable resources, to be treated fairly and feel valued and supported in their workplaces. Because what's good for girls and women is good for everybody. Thank you.
I'm so excited for this interview. So I'm also feeling a little silly because the first two questions I'm going to ask you have to do with men. I want to know about your father.
Okay.
I have two girls. I want the world for them.
Yeah.
And so tell me about the role your father played in this journey when you were pushing back against and creating your own space against the boys.
My dad, I don't know if he would identify as a feminist, but my mom and I certainly call him a feminist. And he was always behind me. I mean, the story with the basketball and the principal's office, when I told my parents what had happened, he was in that principal's office in about 5 minutes, fighting for me.
Sure, I
and
would've been
telling
too.
that guy that, how dare you try to deny my daughter. So he was very influential in my life, being a supportive male and an ally in my fight to do what I wanted to do.
Another person you and I share a relationship with, or shared a relationship with, is Steve Wilkinson, the tennis coach at Gustavus.
Yeah.
I was not good enough to play for Steve Wilkinson. She was. So what effect did he have on your journey?
Oh gosh, I wanted to put Wilk in my story, but there's so much to say about Wilk. Wilk actually recruited me to come to Gustavus. I was going to St. Ben's. Oh, some Bennies in the room. And Wilk, in his Wilk way, who's very persuasive, said, well, just come down and check out Gustavus. And I thought, well, it's a day out of school, and I'm sick of, it's senior year, you're in the slide. So I went to Gustavus. The minute I got out of the car, I knew it was my place. And after I arrived at Gustavus, Wilk was never my coach, even though he recruited my class because we were between coaches. He was one of the most influential people ever. I mean, he was always teaching, he was kind, he was patient, he taught us the 3 crowns, full effort, positive attitude, good sportsmanship that I use every day, the serenity prayer. He was just a wonderful man, and I think he's probably smiling down right now, seeing that in carrying on his legacy and what he taught me as a mentor.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
So I have this image of you in this power suit with a leather briefcase going off to a real job. Well, you know what? You have a real job. You're the director of the Tucker Center.
Yeah, it worked out okay.
Yeah. What does that entail, really? I mean, walk us through what does a week in the life look like?
Well, I have graduate students, some of them who are in the room. I have interns. I teach 2 classes, 1 undergrad, 1 grad in the social sciences of sport, which I love. I love to teach. I mean, it's funny because I grew up not wanting to teach, but the apple in the tree, and I love it. So I teach. I'm doing multiple research projects, and I do a lot of community outreach. So I'm traveling a lot right now around the country and around the world, helping other people fight for gender equity in their sport organizations. So in a typical week, I'm teaching, I'm directing research for my Tucker team, and I'm doing a lot of public speaking.
Well, we're lucky you chose to come and speak here. Thank you.
I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah. So you put this image in our heads of you sitting in the basement of Cook Hall, dreaming about this job. Well, you got it now.
I did.
Yeah, and so what do you think about your future now? You must be dreaming about something. Those muscles don't just go away.
Yeah. You know, taking over the directorship of the first center of its kind in the whole world is a big responsibility, and one that I'm really grateful and I'm honored to take over. And I'm sort of in a season of contemplation right now. What does that next 8 to 10, 3 to 5 to 8 to 10 until I retire look like? Because I do intend to stay there until I retire. And so you know, in a big picture, I would love to see the needle moving with girls' participation, with media coverage, and with more women leaders in sport.
Well, that seems obvious. So I think we're all starting to think about what we can do to help you. So I think that the best coach in Minneapolis-St. Paul is Cheryl Reeve. I think we were mired in 2 to 3 decades of not winning, and here she comes, and she hands us championships and introduces us to these fabulous women, Lindsay Whalen, number of others, right?
Yeah.
Can she coach in the NBA?
Absolutely. Absolutely, without a doubt. And she'd be really successful.
Yeah, so what do you think that's going to take? Let's just talk about it for a second.
Well, first of all, I think it's important to note that the pinnacle of one's coaching career is not coaching men. And coaching is not predicted by one's gender. So if she chose to coach in the NBA, which she could, I doubt she would, because she's a fierce advocate for girls and women in sport. She and I share that. I think she would be highly successful. And what's really cool about the NBA is that once they hired Becky Hammon in 2012 to help coach the Spurs, they now have 9 women as assistant coaches in the NBA. So I get asked a lot, well, what does this mean? You know, is the floodgates going to open for women coaching in the NBA? And I just say, I'm cautiously optimistic, but it's too early to tell.
That's a great answer.
Yeah.
Good for you. Okay, so we ask the same question to every speaker who comes. We do the Good Leadership Breakfast because we believe goodness pays. Our mission is to spread that idea. And we try to provide proof points that encourage people to maybe go back and lead with a different level of courage because they believe. So how do you know for sure through your life and experience that goodness pays?
That's a really great question. I think I'd point to one specific initiative that we had in the Tucker Center. For years, I wanted to take our research and make it more translatable and applicable. So as a large land grant, Research One institution, our mission is to serve the public. And I feel very strongly about that. And we were doing all this research around women in sport leadership, and particularly coaches. So I wanted to start a Women Coaches Symposium locally. And it started out 7 years ago with 70 women. And now it's grown to sold out capacity of 350 women, all levels, all sports. And many of the women that have attended that coaching symposium have gone back to their own communities and their own sport organizations and started women mentoring and networking organizations that are now influencing thousands of women. And so from that one idea of we need to serve our own community of women and develop a network of women sport coaches, it's just sort of growing and created opportunity. So it's been amazing to see that grow.
Congratulations. We're grateful for you.
Thank you, Paul.
Absolutely.